that's the title of her show. And so it's time for us to welcome humorist and comedian Gloria Parr.
It's so wonderful to see everybody here tonight. Just give me a moment to sit. I'm not sure whether I'm going to be needing the microphone or not. So I'm going to ask the person way in the back if they can hear me.
What's you saying?
Okay, that had to be Lou. Okay. Is that better? Okay. Well, everyone, I'd like to welcome you here tonight. Isn't this the most magnificent public library in Seneca Falls? Actually, it's the only public library in Seneca Falls. I am so glad that all of you wonderful people took the time to come here tonight to have some fun and to watch me make a complete spectacle of myself. And speaking of spectacles, I may have to refer to my special spectacles in case I have a senior moment. Now please don't be concerned about my crutches. My husband warned me to keep off those ramps at our new skate park. Laughter is truly the best medicine. It doesn't cost anything. You don't need a prescription. There's no referral. And there's no copay. However, I must warn you, there are about 3 possible reactions. Number 1, it is contagious. And number 2, you may laugh so much that you hurt your stomach. And number 3, you may laugh so hard you wet your pants. My motto is, and always has been, humor rules. So I would like all of you here tonight to repeat after me, as loud as possible, humor rules. Humor rules. Well, you know, that was pretty good. But I didn't hear some of those people in the back, so we're going to do it one more time. Humor rules. Humor rules. Okay. That was very good. In fact, it was so good, I'd like you all to give yourselves a great big hand. Some of what I share tonight with you is true, and some of it is just for fun. And I'm sure that those of you who know me will be able to figure out which is which. When I first met my husband, John, he was invited to dinner to meet my parents. After dinner, my father invited him into the library. Well, it wasn't really a library. It was just a small den with a 3-shelf bookcase. He wanted to talk to my father in private. Well, my father looked at him and said, "So, John, tell me about yourself." And as John looked around the library, he looked around and he saw all these religious pictures on the wall and a huge cross. And he said, "Well, sir, I am a member of St. Patrick's Church, and when I was younger, I used to be an altar boy." "That's not what I mean," my father said. "What will you do to provide a home for my daughter?" "I will say my prayers regularly, and God will provide." Yes, but how are you going to be able to support my grandchildren?" "God will provide." Later that night, my mother asked him, "Well, how did it go, dear?" And he just threw up his hands. He has no job. He has no employment plans. And worst of all, he thinks I'm God. Well, we have been married for almost 45 years. And when we retired, we found that we had a lot more laughter and a lot less stress in our lives. My job in healthcare was extremely, extremely stressful. Like finding out that the gal who worked in the deli at the PNC made more than I did, and she still couldn't pass her GEDs. Well, one time, I'll never forget it, I catheterized this really old man. He was so sweet. And a week later, he sued me for sexual harassment. And a week after that, he proposed to me. When I told this chronically complaining woman to shove it, I looked at her chart and found out she was Sister Ann Margaret from St. Mary's. My husband, John, worked for the federal government, and he celebrated his retirement with a six-pack of Viagra and a copy of that new bestseller, Sex After 60, written by Dr. Ruth. I will never, ever forget the day that my mailman delivered my invitation to AARP. Well, I let out such a scream that the mailman didn't know what to do, and the neighbors all ran over, and the mailman just yelled at them, "Stand back, folks. Give her some air. She's not hurt. She was just arched." Well, I was so upset I went to bed for 3 days. And finally, resolved to the fact that I was no longer young, I canceled my subscription to Cosmopolitan, bought a bottle of Centrum Silver. Well, John and I decided to travel and experience new things. But before we did that, I just had to do something about my leaking faucets. It was then that I discovered that my gynecologist was now my plumber, although he charges less. On my first visit, my gynecologist assured me that I was not incontinent. I was just urologically challenged. Well, he suggested that I visit Walmart. Well, they have a long aisle there, and there's a sign right on top, incontinence, right up there for the whole friggin' world to see. However, there are hundreds of products on the shelf, and with such interesting names: Rejoice, Tranquility, Dignity, both Lady Dignity and Sir Dignity. Depends on what. Whether or not you want them with Velcro, wings, pouches, pull-ons, or pull-ups. When someone asked Bob Dole whether he wore boxers or briefs, he said, "Depends." There is a new drug out for incontinence, and it's called Relief. It contains 99% alcohol. You still wet your pants every time you cough or sneeze, but you don't give a damn. The other day I called the incontinent hotline, and a voice said, "Can you please hold?" Well, next I decided that I just had to do something about my weight. I was tired of buying my clothes at Tubbs R Us. I tried dieting, but diets just don't work for me. On one diet, I ate so much fiber, I passed a wicker basket. And then I tried the 24-day diet, but all I lost was 2 weeks. Well, Dr. Phil suggested that to feel better about myself, I should go home and finish 2 things that I had started. So I went home and finished a chocolate pie and a bag of Fritos. Well, finally, as a last resort, I went to a camp for overweight women, Camp Happy Hips. But I was asked to leave after I enrolled in kickboxing class. I accidentally kicked my instructor, Mr. Hung Low. I didn't lose any weight, but poor Hung did. He was in a coma for weeks. Here, I shouldn't laugh. Well, I found out that our HMO does not cover extreme makeovers. They refused to pay $5,000 for me to have a facelift. What? I went to this plastic surgeon, and I said to him, well, what can you do for about $50? Ladies and gentlemen, this is it. Oh, God. Anyway, they also refused to pay for my membership for the unisex club here in Seneca Falls for people with arthritis. Right, Angie? We call ourselves the Awesome Arthritis. And once a week we meet in a hot tub, popping Celebrex and extra strength Tylenol, and drinking Metamucil margaritas. Now you may wonder, how do I know whether I have a cheap HMO or not? Well, I put together what I feel are the top 10 reasons you know you have a cheap HMO. Number 1, your annual breast exam is held at Hooters. Number 9, the directions to your doctor's office say, take a left when you enter the trailer park. Number 8, your doctor is wearing the pants that you just donated to the Salvation Army. Oh, and around his neck he's got a Fisher Price telescope. Probably got it at Toys R Us. Number 7, a sign in his office reads, the doctor is out today, but his receptionist is taking his place. Let's hope it's not the girl at the deli at the PNC. Number 6, you call for an ambulance, and they send a pickup truck with an IV hanging from the antenna. Number 5, you and your roommate share the same bed and the same IV. Number 4, you are in surgery, and your anesthesiologist hands you a glass of cheap wine and a tranquilizer. Number 3, through the fog of anesthesia, you hear your surgeon yelling, where the hell is the Scotch tape? Number 2, for all joint replacements, they refer you to Dr. Bob Vila at the Home Depot. And the number 1 reason that you know you have a cheap HMO, the only proctologist in the group is Gus from Roto-Rooter. Well, John and I went on a senior citizen cruise to the Caribbean on the USS Geritol. We were really happy to find that they had ramps to the lifeboats, and there were rocking chairs on the sun deck, and the midnight buffet was held before 8 o'clock. It was here that we discovered a wonderful drink called kava. It is made from a tropical herb. It's true. And the islanders have been making and drinking it for thousands of years. Once you take your first sip, you feel so good. So relaxed. And so sexy. But you have to be careful with a kava. You must never ever mix it with a pill that they give you to prevent seasickness. Well, one night I was feeling a little nauseous, so I took 2 pills instead of 1 and washed it down with a half a bottle of kava. And that night at the captain's table, I passed out. And when I woke up, I found myself being examined by this young, handsome Latin doctor. He looked a little bit like Antonio Banderas. Well, Antonio asked me too many personal questions, like, are you sexually active? And as I looked up into his big brown eyes and at his magnificent physique, I wanted to say, no, but I'd sure like to be. But actually, that's not true. John had remembered to bring his six-pack and his book by Dr. Ruth. I needed a bathing suit for this trip. I had a terrible time finding one that fit. Well, I finally borrowed a bikini from my friend Pat Dorado. But when I tried it on, it snapped like a rubber band and flew across the room and hit poor John right between the, well, use your imagination. Thank God he's on Viagra. And I'm on kebab. Anybody here been on one of those senior citizen bus trips? Anybody here? Well, we really enjoy them. On our first trip, our driver, Bubba, introduced everyone on the bus. And we couldn't help but notice that most of the men on the bus were bald, except for Bubba. Well, he did some kind of a comb-over. You know what I mean? It seems he grew foot-long strands of hair along the base of his skull and then swooped it up over his head. One day, he even swirled it on top. He looked just like an ad for Dairy Queen. The oldest passenger on the bus, Lucia, was 90 years old. She wore black every day in case someone died. When Bubba told her in confidence that he had been born again, she asked him if it hurt. He made her sit in the back of the bus. As we drove through the Bible Belt, we stopped at the 10 Commandments theme park, 6 Flags Over Moses. My favorite rides there were the bouncing Bibles and the twirling Testaments. Michael Jackson was there selling Jesus juice. And Martha Stewart was raffling off an African, 12-foot-long African of the Last Supper. She made it while she was on vacation at the 5-star Camp Cupcake. Well, I made my way over to the Catholic section. I noticed all these people saying they were standing in line and they were waiting for Mel Gibson to hear their confession. And after that, he was going to sign his latest book, The Gospel According to Mel. Just before we boarded the bus, we thought we ought to, stop at one of the refreshment booths. And there we had all kinds of wine and matzo balls on a stick and my absolute favorite, Vatican popsicles. Bubba stopped at one of those little religious stores, and there he struck up a conversation with a sweet little old lady, and she had just come from a prayer meeting. Well, she bought a bumper sticker for her car, and it said, "Honk if you love Jesus." She stuck it on her Mercedes. Well, after we left, she drove several cars ahead of us, and she stopped at the red light. But then she must have got so caught up thinking about the Lord and her prayer meeting, she didn't notice that the light had changed. But she just knew the driver behind her also loved Jesus, because he kept honking his horn like crazy. Finally, he leaned out of the window and yelled, "For the love of God, go, go, Jesus Christ, go." As everyone continued honking, she stuck her head out of the window, waving and smiling at all of the Lord's worshipers. She even honked her horn a few times to share in the love. One angry driver got out of his car, made a very obscene gesture. Well, she must have thought it was some kind of a Christian sign, because she gave it right back to him. Finally, she noticed that the light had changed, and she drove away honking and giving everyone that special Christian sign. On our way home, Lucia went to the tiny bathroom at the back of the bus. She forgot to lock the door. And at that very moment, Bubba hit a huge pothole. And poor Lucia went flying down the aisle, her skirt over her head, revealing her black Victoria's Secret high-cut French briefs. And as Bubba reached out to grab her, he went through a red light. Next thing we knew, this young policeman came on the bus to give him a ticket. And Lucia grabbed her cane and started hitting this young police officer with it and yelling, "You giving me odds. Turns out she was his grandmother. He ran off the bus. My friend Angelina Rosenblum also loves to travel. Angelina is half Jewish and half Catholic. When she goes to confession, she brings her lawyer with her. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned, and I believe you know my lawyer, Mr. Serling. Angelina has been so depressed lately after 2 failed marriages. Her first husband, Bernardo the Bull Gambino, never told her he was in the mafia. Now he is in the Witness Protection Program. Well, we think that the Mennonites in Romulus are hiding him. Because the other day we saw a man dressed like a Mennonite, but he had on a thick gold necklace and a huge diamond ring on his pinky. And he was driving one of those horse and buggies and yelling, "Madame, Madame, Napoli," to every driver that passed him. Rumor has it that when the Mennonite elders told him that he too had to pitch in and help put up the bull barn, he put a contract out on them. And poor Angelina, she met Billy Bob when he came to Empire Farm Days in a pickup truck. Gotta have some more kebab. But it wasn't until after they were married that she realized that he was a redneck. For their wedding, his family all pitched in, got them a matching set of salad bowls. And they all said Cool Whip on the side. And his best man gave them a 6-foot velvet picture of Elvis. And Billy Bob hung it above their bed. Well, she was really getting disgusted, and so she said to him, "You know, you really ought to do something to improve your mind." So he went to the library to get a book. And days later, he returned the book. And he walked up to the librarian, and he said, "That was the most boring book I ever read. There was no storyline, and there were way too many characters." And the librarian just glared at him. "So you're the guy that took our phone book." My friend finally told Billy Bob to put on his blue suede boots, go back to Memphis, and take Elvis with him. Angelina was a Broadway diva when she was younger. You may remember her from last year's Senior Follies. But as she got older, she found herself performing just off Broadway, and then off Broadway, And finally, so far off Broadway, she was in Jersey. But her loyal fans still were true to her, and they lined up in droves to see her when she starred in Vaseline, the off-Broadway production of Grease. But now Angelina had decided to do a complete about-face and become a librarian. The only problem was she was really afraid that she would lose her diva image, because she told me, when I think of librarians, I think of, like most people have them stereotyped as stern, frumpy spinsters who wear orthopedic shoes and their hair in a bun. I told her not to worry. Last week, I was the guest speaker at the American Library Association Conference. There were more than 13,000 librarians there in search of alcohol and cheap reference materials. Written on a large banner over the main conference room were these words: "Librarians control information. Don't ever piss one off." Vendors were selling buttons which said, "No, I won't clear your library fines." Librarians today come in all shapes and sizes. The bold and sassy lipstick librarian can be found wearing a mini skirt, top with a plunging neckline, and more makeup than Tammy Baker. High-tech Hannah helps people who want to use the library computers. She loves to show off her high-tech language. Did you know we store over 10 gigabytes of indexed reference materials over our new wireless LAN running Linux? Louis the librarian wears a Calvin Klein sport coat over his tie-dye t-shirt, Nike sneakers, and an earring. And if he should happen to take off his sport jacket, you might find the Dewey Decimal System tattooed on his arm. I just joined AARB, the American Association of Retired Bikers. Bought myself a Harley. My wheelchair just wasn't doing it for me, especially since I started gaining weight and my thighs kept rubbing together. I was afraid they'd set fire to my pantyhose. I tried to buy a pair of those black leather biker's pants, but they don't come with Depends. But I did buy one of those vanity license plates. It says PMS. Nobody cuts me off. Now I am a senior member of Hell's Angels. We tour the country, stopping at diners that offer the 7-course biker special, a hamburger and a 6-pack. Some of our senior angels have breasts that hang at half-mast. Now this can be a problem when they hop on their bike, step on the accelerator, and hit themselves in the face. It isn't only Janet Jackson that has a wardrobe malfunction. Oh, God. Well, yesterday, on my way home from a bike rally, I stopped to see my Uncle Luigi. Uncle Luigi is 93 years old, a quiet man. He was spending most of his time sitting in his rocking chair, drinking beer, watching sports on TV, and shopping on QVC. Well, Uncle Luigi got really sick. He tried to call 911, but he forgot the number. And then they found out he had so many stones. They called in a geologist. Well, poor Uncle Luigi, he just got worse and worse, and finally he had to have three organ transplants. They gave him the liver of a chimpanzee, the kidneys of an incontinent donor, and the heart of a woman. Now he leaps all over the house, swinging from the chandelier, pees all over the furniture, and watches as the world turns. How many of you here are familiar with the magazines Playboy and Playgirl? How many? Can I see a show of hands?
Yeah, raise your hand.
My son-in-law didn't raise his hand. Joe, come on. Oh, well, we'll talk later. Okay. Well, they have a new one out now for senior women, and it's called Playwoman. I stopped at the Seneca Falls drugstore to get the latest copy. I couldn't wait to see who would be in the centerfold. Would it be Larry King, wearing nothing but his suspenders, holding up his Sir Dignities? Well, I looked around to make sure that no one was looking, grabbed the magazine off the shelf, and opened it to the centerfold. And there he was. Oh my God. Luciano Pavarotti. Wearing a tattoo of his favorite true love, a bowl of linguine. John and I watch a lot of TV, and one of our favorite shows is Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Well, now the producers decided that, they were going to cancel that show. They wanted another reality show. And they're going to call it, Who Wants to Have a Mammogram? Why do they call it a mammogram? Are you supposed to put your breast in an envelope and send it to someone? The other night I was standing out in the cold, and this thought came to me. Where on earth is the hot flash when you really need it? Oh, it's not easy being a senior citizen. And I put together top 10 reasons why you know you're a senior citizen. Number 10, your teeth and you don't sleep together anymore. Oh my goodness. Number 9, you try to straighten out the wrinkles in your socks and discover you aren't wearing any. Number 8, you're eating breakfast and you hear snap, crackle, pop, and you aren't even eating cereal. My daughter-in-law Wendy's over here camcording this, and I keep hearing her say, "Oh, sorry, Wendy." Okay. Number 7, you no longer have to spend $5. Excuse me. You no longer have to spend $7 a pound for steak. You can't chew it anyway. Number 5, you no longer have to save for the future. Now is the time to spend your kids' inheritance. Number 4, happy hour is a nap. Number 3, getting lucky means finding your car in the parking lot. And number 2, you try to enter your password on the microwave. And also, you don't have to worry about being lonely anymore. You're either babysitting, pet sitting, or the whole damn family has moved back in with you. And the number 1 reason you know you're getting old, you walk into Victoria's Secret and the clerks all hide behind the desk. John and I are Italian American, and my mother, Ann Didio Giovanini, as she always proudly said, we are from northern Italy. Right, Mary Ann? Right. John, on the other hand, is from Sicily, which is as far south as you can get. Now, don't let our last name Paris fool you. Apparently, the last letter I got lost somewhere on Ellis Island. But for your information, we are not related to the Sopranos. Although there's some question about the Corleones. We are related to just about everyone in Seneca Falls whose name ends in a vowel, except Dr. Lee. My mother was a Giovannini, and we are related to the Giovanettis, Lorenzettis, Franceschis, Lucchesis, Piolis, Paganos, Carasillas, and that's just the immediate family. John and I always wanted to visit Italy, but we never did. We never got there because we felt it would be too difficult for me to get around unless I brought my skateboard. In February, our daughter, Dr. Ann, her husband Joe, and our son-in-law Joe, and our son Greg, my director on the West Coast, brought us to Italy and Sicily. And as we toured the Vatican, Colosseum, chapels, churches, parks, and museums, and ate our way from Rome to Palermo, they took turns pushing me in my bright blue chariot, my wheelchair. And how we all laughed as they rode me down the narrow streets and over cobblestones and up and down curves and hills. Well, my son-in-law, Joe here, he's the younger version of Mario Andretti. Well, he took great pride in racing with me in my chariot. And then, when we get to the top of a hill, well, he'd pretend to let go. Well, I think he was pretending. Well, I hope that you have had as much fun here tonight as I have. Grandson Kyle, next to grandson Brandon. And please remember, no matter where our lives take us, laughter is truly the best medicine. You don't need a prescription. It doesn't cost anything. You don't need a referral. And there is no copay. Humor rules. Humor rules.